The auction was almost over. The sun was setting over the alien market. Casting long shadows across the dusty ground, traders were packing up, cages were being unlocked, and slaves were being taken away. One by one, buyers left with their new properties, some proud, some silent, some laughing. But in the far corner of the market, one cage remained. Guards stood around it with blasters in hand, keeping their distance. Inside that cage sat a girl alien, wild and silent. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn, and her skin covered in dirt and old bruises. But it was her eyes that made people afraid. They burned like fire, sharp and dangerous. No one wants that one, the auctioneer said, laughing nervously. She's untamable. A group of rich buyers had gathered near her cage earlier, but all backed away quickly. She bit a warlord. One said, she broke a shock collar with her bare hands, another added. She growls at night like a beast. A third whispered. The auctioneer shook his head. We've lowered the price 5 times. He said, still no one dares. Then someone stepped forward. He was a human, tall and quiet. Not dressed like a rich man, not wearing a weapon. His eyes were calm, but they saw everything. He walked slowly, his boots crunching the sand, and stopped in front of her cage. She looked up at him. Her eyes locked with his. For a moment, the whole market fell silent. He didn't speak. She didn't blink. Then the auctioneer laughed awkwardly. Sir, this one is dangerous. Might attack. You in your sleep won't obey commands, refuses food. She's not worth, I'll take her. The human said quietly. Everyone froze. Sir. The auctioneer asked, not believing his ears. I said, I'll take her, he repeated. His voice was calm, but firm. The guards stepped forward, confused. You don't understand. One said, she's not just wild, she's broken. She doesn't even speak. She's not broken, the human replied. She's surviving. He paid the price without asking for a discount. It wasn't much. She had been marked as worthless by now. The cage door opened with a heavy creak, but the girl didn't move. She just sat there, staring at him. Her eyes were unreadable, part hate, part curiosity. The guards tried to pull her out, but the human raised his hand. Let her come on her own, he said. Surprisingly, she stood. Her movements were slow, but strong. She walked out of the cage with her head held high. Like a queen in chains, she followed the human. Her step silent, her face unreadable. The market watched in silence as the two disappeared into the desert beyond. Whispers followed them, dead by morning. One trader muttered, foolish human. Said another, she'd kill him in his sleep. Night came fast, and stars lit the sky. The human and the alien girl reached his small ship parked outside the city. He opened the door and stepped aside, letting her in first. She looked at him for a moment, then walked inside without a word. He gave her water, food, and a blanket. She didn't touch any of them. Instead, she sat in a corner of the ship, legs pulled close to her chest, watching him like a predator. He didn't force her. He didn't speak again. He just sat nearby, doing his repairs. At midnight, she moved, slowly. She crawled to the food and sniffed it. She tasted a little, then looked at him again. Still, he said nothing, just a quiet nod. She didn't sleep, neither did he. They sat in silence, one watching, one waiting. The night was heavy with tension, but also something else, a strange peace. She didn't try to run, she didn't attack. But she didn't trust him either, not yet, when morning came. The first light touched her face, and for a second, she didn't look like a beast. She looked like a girl, tired, alone, and confused. The human looked at her. You're safe now, he said gently. She flinched like no one had said that to her before. She didn't reply, but this time, she didn't turn away either. Somewhere deep inside her, a wall had cracked. And that was enough for now. The untamable girl had left her cage, But the true story was just beginning. Asterisk, the girl did not sleep that night. Even as the ship moved through the quiet sky, she stayed awake. Knees pulled to her chest, eyes sharpened. Unblinking, the human pilot didn't try to speak to her. He just flew the ship with steady hands and calm eyes. He had no chains on her, no collar, no control chip, nothing. Yet she didn't try to run, not yet. Her fingers twitched, ready to attack if needed. But deep inside, something else stirred confusion. She had been owned before. She had been beaten, shocked, dragged like an animal. But this man? He hadn't touched her, hadn't shouted, hadn't even looked at her with fear. Why? Why wasn't he afraid? At sunrise, the ship landed near a small green planet. It was quiet and peaceful. No cities, no hunters. Just wind and sky and hills. The human opened the ramp and stepped out. "You can stretch your legs here if you want," he said. She didn't move. He left her alone and walked outside. Picked up fruit from a nearby tree, sat down in the grass, and waited. She watched him from the doorway, her body tense, ready to bolt. Her heart beat fast, but curiosity pulled at her feet. She stepped out, slow as a shadow. One step, then another. The light felt strange on her skin, like something she didn't deserve. He didn't look at her, didn't smile, didn't speak, just handed her a piece of fruit. She stared at it, unsure, suspicious. He took a bite from his own, then kept waiting. After a long moment, she took it from his hand, but she didn't eat. She simply held it. Suddenly, she asked, "What do you want from me?" The human looked up. "Nothing," he said. "I just didn't want to leave you in that cage." Her eyes narrowed. "Everyone wants something," she said, her voice low. "Maybe," he replied. "But not always what you think." They sat in silence again. But it was different this time. Not cold, not angry. Just unsure. Later, back on the ship, she found the small room he had made for her. It had a soft bed, a warm blanket, even a tiny lamp with changing lights. She stood there, frozen. No slave got their own space. She touched the blanket slowly. Then backed away. She didn't trust it. She couldn't. That night, she didn't sleep on the bed. She curled up on the floor in the corner, eyes watching the door, like she always had, at midnight. Her old nightmares returned. She growled in her sleep, kicked the floor, and hit the walls, screaming in a language the human didn't understand. He ran to her room, but stopped at the door, didn't enter, didn't grab her. He just sat outside the room, waiting when she woke. Breathing fast, she found him there. She stared at him through the half-open door. "Why didn't you come in?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Didn't want to scare you," he said. She didn't know what to say. No one ever cared if she was scared. Before, in the morning, something changed. She sat at the table when he offered food. She ate slowly, eyes always on him. She drank water without spilling it. She didn't thank him, but she didn't spit it out either. He handed her a piece of cloth and a comb. She took it, hesitated, then cleaned her face and began brushing her hair in rough strokes. "I don't even know your name," he said, quietly. She paused, then looked away. "I don't have one," she said. "They called me Beast." He frowned. "Well, I won't." He said, "You'll tell me your real name when you're ready." She didn't answer, but for the first time. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. Later, when he was fixing the engine, she crept close, watched him work. He showed her a tool, held it out. She took it, handed him another without being asked. He gave her a small nod. She nodded back. That evening, as stars filled the sky, she spoke again, soft and slow. "My name? I think it was Syrah." The human smiled gently. "Syrah," he repeated. "That's a good name." She looked at him. And for the first time, she didn't look like a weapon, or a slave, or a beast. She looked like a girl trying to remember who she really was. The ship floated quietly through space. Syrah sat near the window, staring at the stars. Her knees were pulled to her chest, arms wrapped around her legs. She didn't speak. Not even when the humans sat across from her, quietly fixing a scanner. Days had passed since he took her from the cage. She hadn't tried to run, or fight, or destroy anything. But she still didn't smile, still didn't laugh, still didn't trust. The human, named Jaren, never forced her, never questioned her silence. He just let her be. He offered her food at every meal, water whenever she needed, a blanket when she shivered at night, and in return, she watched him. She watched how he spoke softly to his tools, how he helped injured animals he found on small planets, how he cleaned the ship without complaining. She watched him fix a broken wire, shock his hand, and laugh quietly to himself. He was strange. Kindness was a strange thing. That morning, he cooked something that smelled sweet, steam rising and soft curls. He placed a bowl in front of her, then turned to wash his hands. Sierra stared at the bowl. Then she looked at him, and without planning to, she spoke. Why? Jaren turned around slowly, not sure he heard it right. What? He asked gently. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why are you like this? He sat down, gave her a small smile. Like what? Not afraid. She said, not angry, not cruel. Jaren shrugged. Maybe because I don't see a beast. He said, I see someone who survived. Sierra looked down at her hands. Her fingers trembled. Her voice came again. Cracked and uncertain, they hurt me, she whispered, because I would not obey. I know, Jaren said quietly. They called me a monster, she said, voice rising. They locked me in chains, threw food at me like I was nothing. Jaren didn't interrupt. I fought, she said, eyes shining. I bit, I kicked, I screamed. Because I didn't want to be broken. You weren't, he said. You're still here. She looked at him, breathing hard. Her chest rose and fell like a drumbeat. Her heart didn't know what to feel: relief, anger, or fear. I don't understand you, she whispered. You don't have to, Jaren said. Just eat your food before it gets cold. She stared at him, then at the bowl. Then, slowly, she ate. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. Later that day, they landed on a small moon. Jaren said he needed to trade for fuel cells. Sierra followed him quietly, hood over her head. The moon town was small, rough, and full of eyes. Some aliens looked at her with fear, some with disgust, some with desire. But Jaren walked beside her like she was just another traveler. No leash, no collar, no orders. At the trader's booth, a tall creature growled. You walking that beast around without a cage. Jaren didn't flinch. She's not a beast. She nearly killed a guard at Cosport. The trader sneered. I know that face. Sierra tensed, her hands balled into fists, ready to fight. But Jaren stepped in front of her. Touch her, and you'll lose more than your pride, he said calmly. The trader growled, but backed off. Muttering curses, back on the ship, Sierra sat in silence. Her jaw was tight, her breath sharp. You didn't have to do that, she said. I wanted to, he replied. You're not something to be caged. Her voice trembled again. What if I go wild again? Jaren smiled gently. Then I'll remind you who you are. And who am I? She asked. You're Sierra, he said. That's enough for now. That night, she didn't sleep in the corner. She sat on the bed, legs dangling, watching the stars through the small window. Jaren passed by her room and paused. Good night, Sarah, he said. She didn't answer right away, but just before he walked away, her voice followed, soft and unsure. Good night. Jaren, it was the first time she said his name, and it made him smile. Behind the door, Sierra looked down at her hands again. They still shook sometimes, but they were no longer just weapons. They were hands that remembered how to hold, hands that might one day reach out for something more. The ship moved slowly through a quiet starfield. Jaren sat in the cockpit, watching the stars drift past. Syrah sat behind him, silent as always, but closer than before. She didn't hide from him anymore. She sat with her legs folded, her eyes focused on the controls. Her face was calm, but her mind was not. Something inside her was beginning to stir. Something old, something buried. Jaren looked back at her. "You want to try flying?" he asked with a smile. She blinked, surprised. "I've never." "Then, today's a good day to learn," he said. Moving aside, Syrah hesitated. But then stepped forward, sat down slowly in the co-pilot's seat. Her fingers hovered over the controls, unsure. "Easy," Jaren said, "like touching a river." She moved the ship forward with care. Her touch was light, but precise. "You learn fast," Jaren said, impressed. "I watched you," she replied, simply. For a few minutes, there was peace. Stars moved around them like slow fireflies. The ship hummed gently. Then a red warning light flashed on the screen. "Pirate beacon," Jaren muttered. "They're scanning ships near the moons." He quickly changed course. Pulled them toward a quiet asteroid field. "Hide in there," he said. "Keep us steady." Syrah followed his instructions like second nature, weaving through rocks and shadows. Her hands moved with speed and instinct. "You're a natural," Jaren said, breathing out, but Syrah didn't smile. Her face had gone pale. Her hands trembled slightly. "Are you okay?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached back and scratched at her shoulder blade. Under her shirt. "What is it?" Jaren asked, noticing her discomfort. "Nothing," she said quickly. But her voice shook. Later that night, she sat alone in her room, her back against the wall, her breath shallow. Her eyes locked on the corner of the mirror. She slowly lifted her shirt and turned to look. There it was, glowing faintly under her skin. A strange mark, shaped like a circle with 3 sharp wings. It pulsed softly, like it was alive. She touched it, and pain flashed through her spine. She gasped, falling forward, hands on the floor. Her heart pounded. It had never glowed before, not until today. Suddenly, her door opened. Jaren stood there, worry on his face. "I heard you fall," he said, rushing to her. "Don't," she said quickly, pulling her shirt down. "Go away," he stopped. "Syrah, what's wrong?" "Nothing," she lied. But her voice cracked. He didn't listen. He sat down beside her, silent. After a long moment, she spoke. "There's something on my back." "Can I see it?" he asked softly. She looked at him, her eyes full of fear. "I don't know what it is," she whispered. "But it was burned into me years ago. They said it marked me as cursed." "Cursed?" Jaren asked. Why? She pulled up her shirt slowly. Revealing the mark, Jaren leaned in. His eyes narrowed. "I've seen this before," he said. Her heart stopped. "Where?" "In an old history file," he said. "It's not a curse, Sarah. It's royal." She froze. "What?" "This is the symbol of House Arvan," Jaren said. "They ruled one of the strongest empires in the Outer Rim. Until they were overthrown 15 years ago." She shook her head. "No. That's impossible." Jaren looked at her carefully. "How old were you when you were taken?" I don't remember," she said. "Everything is a blur, Sarah," Jaren said. "I think you're not just anyone. I think you're the last heir." Her eyes widened. "No," she said, standing up, pacing the room. "I can't be. I was nothing. I was a slave. A thing." "That's what they wanted you to believe," Jaren said, standing with her. "But this mark. It proves you're more." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't want to be more," she said. "More means hunted. More means war. But it also means truth," Jaren said. "And maybe justice." She sat down hard. "If they find out, they'll kill me. Then we'll make sure they don't," Jaren said. She looked at him. "Why are you still here?" "Because I promised to protect you." He said, "I never asked," she whispered. "You didn't have to," he replied. That night, she didn't sleep. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, touching the glowing mark. The girl who had once been locked in chains, called a beast, sold for scraps, now had royal blood running through her, and for the first time that terrified her more than any cage ever did. Sierra couldn't stop staring at the mark on her back, ever since it began to glow. Nothing felt safe anymore. Not the ship, not space, not even Jaren. But Jaren stayed calm. He adjusted their course again, flying deep into a quiet sector far from the trade routes. "We need to keep low," he said. "If that mark is real, they'll come looking for you." "Who?" Sierra asked. "Everyone," he replied. "Warlords, bounty hunters, assassins, anyone who fears your return." She hugged her knees tighter. "I never asked for this, I know," Jaren said, "but maybe the galaxy needs someone like you." She didn't answer. They landed on a quiet moon. For supplies, the wind was strong, carrying sand across the rocky ground. A few small traders lived there. But it wasn't crowded. Jaren walked into the supply post. Sierra followed behind with her hood up. Her eyes scanned every corner. Every movement she felt watched, even if no one looked directly inside the post. Jaren spoke with the shopkeeper, trading scrap metal for fuel and rations. Sierra stayed near the door, trying not to draw attention, but someone was watching. A figure leaned against the far wall, face hidden under a dark visor. Sierra noticed him the moment they entered. She kept glancing at him, her instincts screaming. When Jaren finished, they turned to leave. That's when the man stepped forward. "Leaving so soon," the man said, voice deep and cold. Jaren stepped between him and Sierra, just passing through. The man didn't move. His visor flicked toward Sierra. "She's not who you think," he said. "You should let her go." Sierra tensed. "He knows," she whispered. Jaren placed a hand near his blaster. "You have the wrong girl." He said, "No," the man replied. "I saw the Scanhouse Arvan S mark." Glowing like fire, Sierra's heart pounded. She reached for Jaren's arm, ready to run. The man didn't draw his weapon. "Not yet. I'm giving you a chance." He said to Jaren, "Sell her to me. Walk away. You'll live. I'm not selling anyone," Jaren said. The silence that followed was sharp, like a knife held just above the skin. Then the man moved fast. He drew a shock whip and swung it toward Sierra. Jaren blocked it with his arm, sparks flying. The pain was real, but he didn't back down. He shoved the man back with a hard punch. "Run!" Jaren shouted to Sierra. But she didn't run. She grabbed a loose metal pipe and swung it at the attacker's side. The hit landed, but the man barely flinched. He struck again, knocking the pipe from her hand. "You're still weak," he sneered. Even with royal blood, Sierra's eyes burned. "I'm not weak," she growled. The mark on her back glowed again, brighter than before. For a moment, the attacker froze, staring in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "Only the bloodline can activate it." Sierra didn't wait. She kicked him hard, sending him crashing into a crate of tools. Jaren pulled her close. "Let's go." They ran out of the post and back to the ship. Blaster fire followed them. Jaren shot back, covering their path. They made it inside, the ramp closing behind them. Engines roared to life as they lifted off the ground. Inside, both of them were breathing hard. Jaren looked at her, his arm bleeding. "You okay?" Sierra nodded slowly, still shaking. "I'll live," he said, trying to smile. She looked down, ashamed. "He knew about me because of the mark." "It's not your fault," Jaren said. "You didn't ask to be hunted." "But I'm the reason they're coming," she whispered. "You could die because of me," Jaren stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we fight together." She looked up at him, her voice cracking. "Why do you care so much?" "Because you're not just some lost girl anymore," he said. "You're someone with a name, a past, and maybe even a future." "I don't want a crown." She said. "You don't need one." He replied, "You just need to stay alive." Sira walked to the window and stared out at the stars. Her reflection looked different now. Not a slave, not a weapon, not even a princess. Just her, but in the black of space, more eyes were watching. A message was sent. A signal from the moon below. Target confirmed. Darwin bloodline alive and far away, deep in a warship's cold command room. A voice spoke. "Find her." Asterisk, the ship shook from turbulence as it passed through a stormy atmosphere. Jaren gripped the controls tightly, guiding them down toward a hidden moon deep inside a nebula. The skies outside were thick with green mist and electric clouds behind him. Sira stood silent, her hands clenched at her sides. Her mark had glowed again last night, brighter, hotter. It had burned her skin, but not in pain. It had felt like something was waking up, something alive, something hers. "We'll hide here for a while," Jaren said, landing the ship near a canyon filled with strange glowing stones. "No one will find us so deep." Sira nodded, but her thoughts were far away. She kept hearing that hunter's voice in her mind. Only the bloodline can activate it. Was that what she was now? A lost heir? Or a living weapon? At night, she couldn't sleep. Her skin felt warm, her breath shaky. The mark on her back throbbed like a heartbeat. She stepped outside the ship and walked toward the stones. The wind was soft here, the ground smooth. She knelt beside a glowing rock, closed her eyes, and the memories came. Flashes of fire, of screaming, of hands pulling her away, of her mother's voice, whispering her name, Sira. She opened her eyes, gasping. She didn't remember everything. But now she knew one thing. She had been taken, not lost, stolen, hidden. And something inside her still remembered the fire of her home. Suddenly, the ground shook. A loud humming sound echoed across the canyon. Sira turned and saw it. A black ship landing above the ridge, lights flashing red. Jaren ran out of there. "Ship, blaster in hand, they found us," he shouted. Figures in dark armor dropped from the black ship. They moved fast, weapons aimed, no mercy in their steps. Sira stood frozen for a second. Her heart raced. Inside the ship, Jaren shouted. But Sira didn't move. One of the attackers raised a plasma cannon, aimed it at Jaren. Sira's body moved on its own. She stepped in front of him, hands raised. The cannon fired, but the blast didn't hit them. It stopped, mid-air. Like it had struck an invisible wall. Everyone stared in shock. Sira looked down at her hands, glowing with golden light. Her mark on her back burned so bright it lit up the rocks around them. She didn't understand what she was doing, but she knew she had to keep going. She pushed her hands forward, and a wave of energy exploded from her. It knocked the soldiers backward, sent their weapons flying. Jaren ducked behind a rock. "What was that?" he asked, wide-eyed. Sira didn't answer. Her eyes glowed now. Her body warm with power she never knew she had. The leader of the attackers stood again. "Armor cracked. She's active," he growled. "Take her alive. Kill the human." Jaren raised his blaster, but Sira stepped forward first. "No more running," she said, her voice deeper, stronger. One of the soldiers charged. Sira moved like wind, fast and sharp. She dodged the blade, grabbed his arm, and sent him flying with a single toss. Another tried to grab her. She spun, kicked him into a stone. Jaren fired at the third, giving her cover. The last attacker launched a dart toward her neck meant to paralyze. She caught it in the air, crushed it in her hand. The leader tried to run, calling for extraction, but Sira pointed at his ship, and the engines exploded in a burst of gold light. Silence followed. Jaren stepped closer, eyes full of shock and awe. "Sira," he said. She turned to him slowly. Her glow faded, her hands trembled. "I didn't know I could do that," she whispered. "You saved my life," he said. She fell to her knees, breath shaking. It felt like fire. He knelt beside her. "It's your gift." "It's a curse," she said. "Now they'll all come." "Then let them come," he said. "You're not alone." Tears fell from her eyes, but she nodded. That night, they burned the broken armor of their enemies and hid the remains. Sarah sat by the fire, watching the flames dance. Inside her, something had changed. She wasn't just remembering who she was becoming it. Not a slave, not a prisoner, not just royalty. She was a force, and the galaxy was about to learn her name. Again? The fire had burned down to glowing embers. Sarah sat in silence, her eyes on the flames. Her arms wrapped around her knees. Her body still trembled from the power she released, but Jaren sat beside her, steady, calm. "You didn't just fight," he said quietly. "You chose who to protect." She looked at him, her voice low. "I wasn't trying to be a hero." "You didn't have to," he replied, "but you were." The stars above them blinked like tiny eyes. Somewhere out there, more ships were hunting her, more enemies were waiting, but for now, there was peace. And in that peace, something new grew: hope. Sarah had never known what it felt like to be free and seen at the same time. Not just untied, but understood. The next morning, Jaren repaired the ship's outer hull while Sarah stood on a cliff above the canyon. Wind blowing through her hair, the sky open and endless. In her hand was a small object, an old data crystal she had found in the broken armor of the enemy captain. She plugged it into the ship's console later that day. Images flashed across the screen maps. Names, military plans, and one message: target, Princess Sareth of Arvon. If a live, destroy, or contain, her breath caught in her throat. That name, Sareth, she remembered it now. That was her real name, the one her mother whispered before. She was taken. Sarah turned toward Jaren, her voice barely steady. "I remember now." He stopped what he was doing. "What? My name?" she said. "I'm not just Sarah. I'm Sarah." Jaren nodded slowly. "Then we find your people." "I don't know if any survived," she said. "Then we find out," he replied. "You deserve the truth." They lifted off that same night, moving toward the last known sector of the Arvon Empire. It took days, but finally they reached a system hidden behind collapsing stars. The readings showed faint energy signatures. Older than anything else around, Sarah stepped onto the forgotten world. Its surface was cracked and cold, but ancient. Towers still stood inside one of them. They found them, survivors, not many, but enough old warriors. Injured nobles, quiet scientists, and frightened children, and when they saw her, they dropped to one knee. "Princess Sareth," they whispered. Eyes full of tears. "You are alive." Sarah froze. Her legs wanted to run. Her heart wanted to hide. But Jaren stood beside her, and he didn't flinch. She took a breath, stepped forward. "I don't know how to be your queen," she said. "I only know how to fight." A voice answered from the crowd. "Then teach us to survive." They surrounded her, not with chains, but with open arms. They saw the mark, they saw her scars, and they still bowed. Jaren watched from the side, quiet. Later, one of the elder women approached him. "You brought her home. I just gave her a choice," Jaren said. The elder smiled. "You could be rewarded, given a title. A ship, a planet. I don't need any of that," he said. Looking at Sarah, "I just want to stay by her side." And when Sarah turned to him, her eyes soft for the first time. He said, "Then stay." She took his hand in hers. Not as a queen to a servant, but as a woman to someone who never walked away. A ceremony followed days later. Not grand, not royal, but full of meaning. They lit fires, sang old songs. and spoke her name to the stars against Surith, heir of fire and survival. But Jaren never called her that. To him, she was still Sira, the girl in the cage, the warrior in the shadows, the fire in the canyon, and now, the heart beside his own. She wasn't a slave anymore. Not in chains, not in memory, not in name. She was more. And when others came to challenge her claim, she stood tall, not with rage, but with calm strength. Because she was no longer afraid of what she was and the galaxy. Once silent to her voice, now listened when she spoke.